Hi, sorry, I know. I haven't been on YouTube in forever. But this Kim Davis thing is driving me crazy, and I had to say something. And unfortunately for me, this is not a very procrastination-friendly subject. It's not one of those like, oh, someday I might do a Kim Davis video. No, I either do it now or it's never happening. So I'm doing it now. Okay, 60 seconds of background in case you've been living under a rock. Kim Davis is a county clerk in Kentucky, which for the record makes her an elected government official who's making headlines right now because she's been using her position to deny marriage licenses to same-sex couples, despite the Supreme Court's ruling that these couples have a constitutionally protected right to marriage, just like opposite-sex couples. Davis denied the licenses on the basis of her personal belief as a Christian that marriage can only take place between a man and a woman. Now, is she allowed to do this? No, she's not, for reasons that should be obvious, but that hasn't stopped her from abusing her power thusly. Subsequently, Davis was court-ordered to issue the aforementioned marriage licenses as required by law. Her lawyers tried to appeal. When the appeal was denied, and of course it was denied, Davis persisted in denying marriage licenses to same-sex couples, arguing that she was now acting, quote, under God's authority until she was held in contempt of court and eventually detained. In the meantime, this woman has sort of become the poster girl for so-called Christian persecution in the United States, and that is what I want to address in this video. So the narrative that's being pushed by supporters of Davis, including her attorneys, political pundits, religious leaders, and a couple notable presidential candidates, is that Kim Davis's freedom of religion, and more specifically her freedom of conscience, is being violated by compelling her to issue marriage licenses to people she believes shouldn't be married. Merely having her signature on such a document, Davis argues, is effectively an endorsement of same-sex marriage, which infringes on her personal liberties. Now, frankly, that's idiotic, because the purpose of her signature on the document is not to affirm her approval of the marriage. Its only purpose is to affirm that the applicants meet all of the legal criteria for getting married, and in this case, they did. But Davis and her supporters think that the freedom to practice her religion means she has a right, as a government official, to prevent others from exercising their civil rights if those rights conflict with the tenets of her religion. Let that marinate for a moment. These people think that Kim Davis is a victim of persecution, a bona fide Christian martyr because her Christian beliefs don't give her the authority to violate someone else's constitutional rights. The poor thing. Now, this is an astounding failure of self-awareness, and to anyone with, a brain cell or two, it should be obvious how absurd and self-defeating this position is the moment you reverse the roles, right? So okay, if you've been following the story, you're probably aware that Kim Davis knows a thing or two about the sanctity of marriage because she's on her fourth one. Not to mention the fact that she made babies with the man who would become husband number 3 while she was still married to husband number 1. But that's not the point. It's not the point. It's not the point. Here's the point. Suppose someone with similarly pressing religious concerns had been elected county clerk at the time that Kim Davis was applying for her second marriage license. Now, suppose this person considered himself a Christian and took Jesus very seriously when he said in Matthew 19 that anyone who gets divorced and remarries has committed adultery. Now, how would Davis and her legal team feel about this, about her being denied a marriage license on the grounds that the county clerk feels it would be a violation of his freedom of conscience to sign what he considers an endorsement of her sexual immorality? I mean, what would she do? Would she just like throw her hands in the air and go, well, I don't want to violate this fella's freedom of conscience, so I'll just make my way to the next county over and get a license there? Or would she feel victimized, discriminated against, dare I say, persecuted? Because if it's the latter, then Kim Davis is a hypocrite, and her crusade is a farce. But here's the thing. This is exactly the kind of question that Mika Brzezinski recently posed to Mike Huckabee on MSNBC's Morning Joe. Now, Governor Huckabee is probably the most vociferous of Davis's champions at the moment. He's been getting a whole lot of political mileage off of the Christian persecution narrative, and he's basically turned Kim Davis into an unofficial campaign mascot. But watch this. Watch how beautifully he evades the question while purporting to answer it. Okay, I want to use this as a case study in how easy it is to fail at tracking the logic of an issue. Because it's not enough just to ask a good question. It's good, but it's not enough. We also have to recognize when the question isn't being answered and be able to explain in real time, on the spot, how it isn't being answered. This is especially true of a journalist. Now, Huckabee says, you're asking a question of a different nature because there's a difference between a marriage between a man and a woman and a marriage between two men or two women. The difference between same-sex and opposite-sex marriages is totally irrelevant here. It doesn't change the nature of her question because the question she was asking wasn't about the content of Davis's views on marriage. It was about applying Davis's freedom of conscience argument to other religious beliefs about marriage that a county clerk might hold in order to see if there's a double standard here. Spoiler alert, there is absolutely a double standard here. And when Brzezinski tried to sort of steer Huckabee back on track, he said, well, let me answer your question. What we're talking about is whether or not we have the right to redefine marriage. No, that's not what we're talking about. Actually, that has absolutely nothing to do with the question she asked. Huckabee appears to be representing a not so trivial percentage of Americans who are fundamentally confused about which conversation is even being had at the moment. Whether or not same-sex couples have a constitutionally protected right to marriage is what we were talking about back in June before the Supreme Court made their decision. It's not what we're talking about anymore. The free exercise of religion allows you to have any belief you want about the nature of marriage, but as far as the law is concerned, the institution of marriage is not something that excludes same-sex couples. And if that is what you mean by redefining marriage, then yes, Governor Huckabee, I'm sorry. Article 3 of our Constitution gives the Supreme Court authority to do that, and if you don't know this, then you don't understand the relationship between our three branches of government, and you have no business running for president. Let's be very clear right now. The Kim Davis controversy is not about whether same-sex couples have a legal right to marry. That question has already been answered once and for all. The controversy is about whether the freedom to practice one's religion entitles someone in Kim Davis's position to violate the constitutional rights of those she took an oath to serve. And the answer, legally, is a big, fat no. But something tells me that Kim Davis already understands this, namely the fact that she feels the need to cite God's authority as a justification for defying a lawful court order. She literally believes that she is above the law because insert religious belief here. And this is why it's actually not enough just to prove that Davis has acted unlawfully. We need to prove that someone like Kim Davis doesn't want to live in a civil society where people like her get to have their way, that any acquiescence to Davis's deranged view of religious freedom would set a precedent that, as a matter of fact, makes everyone less free to practice their religion or exercise their conscience. So, yeah, Mike Huckabee and anyone else defending Davis at this moment must be able to answer this hypothetical about a clerk with a religious objection to remarriage. And it doesn't stop there, by the way. Let me try and paint a picture for you. Okay, so Kim Davis goes to the DMV. But the office manager won't authorize the renewal of her driver's license because he's a Muslim and can't in good conscience approve of a woman driving. And he also can't be penalized for his refusal because to do so would be a violation of his freedom of religion. So, no driver's license for Kim. To get one, she'll have to travel to the next county over, which is difficult because she can't drive now. She decides to take a bus, but unfortunately it's Saturday and the Kentucky Director of Transportation is a Jew who can't possibly approve the operation of heavy machinery on the Sabbath lest his freedom of conscience be violated, so no bus. She could take a taxi, but those are expensive, and Kim hasn't received her paycheck in the mail this month because her postman is a Satanist who believes it would be a violation of his freedom of conscience to participate in financially rewarding Davis for imposing her Christian beliefs about marriage onto same-sex couples. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? This would be an absurd and miserable world to live in, but it's exactly what happens when we take this freedom of conscience argument to its logical conclusion and extend the religious trump card Kim Davis imagines she has to everyone else. The United States is a pluralistic society, which means we can't all get everything we want all the time. So we compromise. The whole point of having rights, of equal rights, is that there is nothing about me exercising my right that should prevent you from exercising yours. And to maintain otherwise is literally incoherent. Because a right that is not unlawful to violate was never a right in the first place, at least not in any meaningful sense. And if I think I have a right, which, if exercised, would prevent you from exercising one of your own, that means I am simply mistaken about my having that right. But let's be honest. Can we do that? Can we be honest? This is a safe place, right? Kim Davis has absolutely no interest in equality. Neither she nor any of her champions actually want to live in a country where her freedom of conscience argument can be employed by other people with other religious beliefs. Her entire case is a big, shining example of special pleading. And this is why people like Mike Huckabee have to stop pretending that rights are what Kim Davis is being denied here. She enjoys the same rights as anybody else. What she's being denied is privilege. She wants her religious beliefs to take precedence over any rights or laws or other religious beliefs that might conflict with them. Well, she doesn't get to have that, and neither does anybody else. So the next time you hear the phrase Christian persecution in this context, please understand how it is that phrase is being used. Christianity has, for centuries, enjoyed an exalted status in American law and culture. And although the zeitgeist has begun to shift away from that and towards more of a state of social and political equilibrium, this is a status to which many Christians have become accustomed and still feel entitled. But it's not that American Christians are being treated less fairly. It's that everyone else is finally being treated more fairly. Kim Davis thinks she's being persecuted because she's being denied an imaginary right, a right that she doesn't have in the first place. The right not merely to practice her religion, but to impose it on everyone else. Davis fancies herself a victim of discrimination only because she isn't being allowed to discriminate. Christian persecution in the United States has become a code word. It's a code word for equality. And to that I say, thank God for Christian persecution.